Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I owe a lot of videos on the psychology of politics, and I recently was just kind of going through, catching up on some comments, and it's been years, so I apologize for that. And I had a number of people who commented and said they were looking forward to this series, so I'm going to try to make good, and hopefully some of these people will make their way back to my channel. Okay, so this is kind of a cautionary warning. I'm not the kind of person, I really truly believe that I don't like to spend a lot of time worrying about things that I cannot do anything about. But that doesn't mean that I don't try to make myself aware of what's going on, aware of things that I should try to plan for, and then try to plan accordingly. And then once I've done everything that I can do, then at that point it's out of my hands, and there is no point in worrying about it beyond that. So today I want to talk about projection, because I see a ton of projection going on right now. And one of the things about projection that's great is that it will allow you to predict what other people are going to do and to know what they have done. Recently my sister was over visiting, and we were talking a little bit about politics, and I think we were talking about the presidential debate. And one of the things that I said is that you hear a lot of talk about January 6th, January 6th, January 6th. I'm not even going to get into what that was, because I actually think I have some different takes on it that I haven't heard. But I said to my sister, I don't understand why when people bring that up, Trump doesn't just say, but I left. So, I mean, I left. So whatever you think about me being a tyrant, or whatever you think about me like interfering with the peaceful transition of power, you have to be really careful when people are attributing things to what people say that are not only not what they said, but completely inconsistent than what they said. There's actually no evidence that when President Trump at the time said, you're going to go and peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. The way that the Democrats will, and media mostly, I don't even know if they would be called Democrats, but the way the media does it, you would think that he was like, I want you guys to all go down to the Capitol and peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. That's the way that they report on it, as if somehow there was some overt, obvious wink wink, nod nod, dog whistle that I don't really mean peacefully. Well, that's unfair, and that it's really ridiculous. It's shocking to me that anyone would fall for it, but apparently people do fall for it. And I will do in a separate video how I came to understand that I should not take for granted what people understand, or what they will fall for, or what they won't fall for. And I don't mean that in any kind of a negative way. It's just that everyone is different when it comes to that. And if you assume, then you may not have some of the conversations that you need to have with people if you just assume that no one would fall for that. Because I was surprised that people fell for Russia, Russia, Russia. I didn't believe it from the very beginning. It sounded absurd to me. And it's one of those kind of things where I would have had to have been convinced that there was evidence of that, which never happened. So therefore, I never believed it. In this particular case, I just kind of feel like it should be obvious to anyone that he left. So why do they continue to talk about it as if he left? And then so we were talking about that, and I noticed that in the recent vice presidential debate, J.D. Vance actually did say that, and they just continued on talking about the peaceful transition of power as if the Democrats are not in power. I'm pausing for dramatic effect, but think about that. Why are they asking Donald Trump or J.D. Vance whether or not they're going to try to disrupt the peaceful transition of power to their self? So what can you read into that? You can read into that they are projecting. And I say this as a cautionary tale, as a warning, if you will, that they don't intend to have a peaceful transition of power if they lose, when they lose, because it seems to me that they think they're going to lose, whether or not that's correct. This is, when I first learned about projection, it was actually in my high school psychology 101 class. I actually think it was called Psychology 101, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I was a junior in high school, and this was one of the topics that we covered, was projection. And I was thinking to myself, that will never work. Nobody would ever do that. No one would ever fall for that. How are you going to accuse somebody of doing something that you do and think that that's going to work? I didn't believe it. But since then, I have actually met people and actually dated someone who did that. And I don't know if he had been, you know, I was older when I dated this man, so I was in my late 40s. And I wondered if this had worked for people that he dated before. And I'm pretty sure that it was not, that what he got from me was not the same effect that maybe he'd gotten from other people, because I used to laugh. And at one point he said something that was so absurd, an accusation that was so absurd, that I was in stitches laughing. And since we were having an argument, and I was laughing, like hysterically laughing, and it was genuine laughter, he started to get angry. He's like, "What are you laughing about? Why are you laughing?" It was because this was the most dramatic representation of what I had learned about in high school and did not believe. I was just like, nobody would ever do this. So when I hear them talking about the peaceful transition of power as if they're not in power, what you're hearing, what you're seeing is projection. Now, based on what I know and what I've been following for the past few years in the political arena, I actually do not believe that they intend to have a peaceful transition of power. I don't. And I think that that's something that everyone needs to be aware of. I don't talk that much about election, you know, integrity and all of the problems in 2020, because I kind of feel like if people want to go and search that information out and see what's out there, then they can do that. But the higher level conversation that I need to have is that I'm not interested in approximate vote totals. I'm not interested in, oh, well, Donald Trump won, without saying that an election that is not conducted in a way that people have confidence in. It's not just about the presidential election. I want to know the exact vote totals for every jurisdiction, for every race in the country. I don't want to just know who won the presidential election. I want to know some of the Senate races that I thought was questionable. I want to know about any race where they were counting. I want to know about any race where they were using machines that didn't count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because I don't really care about their sophisticated machine algorithms and calculations and all of the things that I've heard that actually go on. I don't care about any of that. I want an accurate total for every race, for every jurisdiction in the country. I will accept nothing less. And until we have that, I just don't care what anyone has to say about any one particular race. So that's kind of why I don't really get too deep into that, because the entire process needs to be fixed. And my personal opinion is that we're not even near there yet. So, you know, we've got some new laws in some new places, but what about the places where we don't have new laws? Or what about the places where they didn't follow the laws that were already in place? Like, I feel like the conversation about elections is just too simple. I don't care about the SAVE Act. You know, people are criticizing some of the people that voted against that, but it's like, well, what good does it do to have a law that says that you have to show proof of citizenship in order to register to vote if you have states or counties that just simply don't follow that law and register people anyway without that proof? The bottom line is, what we're missing is accountability. What we're missing is consequences for people who break the law. And until we have that, whatever laws we have just simply do not matter. But let's get back to projection. After everything, you know, you hear one of the other things that you see projection-wise for the political establishment is Democrat Party. I don't like to put Democrat voters in that class necessarily. I don't even know that I believe that there's that many Democrat voters left. But anyway, that you see them saying that Republicans are going to rig elections. Well, do they? Maybe they do. For all I know, Republicans started it. Maybe they were the first ones to rig election, but we know that after the 2020 election, Democrats actually bragged about how they fortified the elections. and all of the different ways that they did different things in order to ensure that they won. So that was another example of them projecting. There's a lot of projection in international affairs, accusing other countries of doing things that they're doing. And it's kind of funny to me when I hear sometimes the U.S., State Department and Security Council saying things like, we're going to hold Iran accountable for supplying weapons to, Hezbollah, or, some militia in Syria somewhere, or some militia in Iraq somewhere. And I'm like, well, I don't know whether they're actually supplying weapons to these people or not, but that's not against the law. The United States is supplying weapons to Ukraine. We're supplying weapons to many, many countries around the world. And it's not illegal. I think the only thing that would be illegal about it is if we're circumventing the country's actual legitimate government to bring things into a country that's illegal in that country. Well, then that would be problematic. And I know the United States does that. I don't know that the weapons that Iran might be supplying to Hezbollah in Lebanon is a problem for the Lebanese government. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. It's really not my problem. It's not my business. That's for Lebanon to work out and to figure out how to stop the flow of illegal weapons into their country if that's something that they want to do. The United States can't stop the illegal, well, they probably can, but they don't want to stop the illegal flow of weapons anywhere. They only want people who are not legally allowed to have weapons to have them. And because you can't control people who don't follow the law. And I think that's a problem in elections. That's a problem with borders. That's a problem with anything where if there's no enforcement, there's no incentive for people who would have a tendency to break the law to follow it. So another projection that we've seen is Donald Trump is going to weaponize the government against his political opponents. Well, I think for most people that one's actually quite obvious at this point. I can't even get past seeing someone say that whilst the Biden administration is actually doing that. And I guess if you were to pry, they would say, well, what he's doing is not actually weaponizing the government. Like, he's just has an independent DOJ that's going after real crimes that are real serious. But no one can take that seriously when you look at particularly these state and local jurisdictions who have dangerous criminals roaming their street, and they're pursuing Donald Trump. And my position is, and I'm going to make a separate video about why I may not vote for Donald Trump, but that's a separate thing. And it has nothing to do with me thinking that he is the right person for the job, because at this particular time I do, but these other issues are personal. But, you're talking about weaponizing government. I don't know if I don't know if anybody is buying that. Like, I think that, the media, the people in the media who are saying this, I'm not believing that they believe it. Maybe they do, but I'm not believing that they believe it. So if they're, that should, to me, damage their credibility and make it so that anything that they say is suspect. I don't know if that's happening. But let's say that they actually do believe that Donald Trump will pursue people. Let's say that he's not weaponizing government, but let's say that he's trying to figure out how to pursue people who have committed serious crimes. And I have a whole opinion about how I think that something like that should be done that I don't even want to get into right now. But let's say that he's doing that. Well, if he were to do that, and at some point someone has to do that, if we do not reel in this sense of impunity that people have for breaking the law, then we will never regain our country back. As long as people feel like there is no consequences, no fear of violating the Constitution, violating the law, doing whatever they want to do, then they will always do that. There will always be someone who will do that. So there has to be some consequences somehow. And I don't want to discuss how I personally think that should play out right now. But if they believe that, some of the things that they have done would be considered treason. Why would they allow themselves to be removed from power given the gravity of the crimes that they've committed? And so there's no reason whatsoever for us to expect a peaceful transition of power if Kamala Harris loses. There's no reason for us to expect that. And right now, I see things happening that I would interpret as trying to create some kind of conditions. I don't know if it'll work or not, but trying to create some kind of conditions to where they can declare martial law. Like, have you ever heard anyone in the U.S. government that's currently got an official role in Congress, in the Senate, in the Biden administration that questions the legitimacy of what happened in Ukraine? Their elections for president came and went. And they say, we're under martial law, we're in a war, we're not having elections. No one is criticizing that. No one in any official capacity. I don't hear them criticizing that. I don't hear anyone in the United States saying we refuse to recognize the legitimacy of a leader who has their term in office has expired. Well, if they're not going to criticize it there, they're not going to have a problem with it here. The people may have a problem with it, but it seems very obvious to me that the current administration, the current regime in the United States does not care what the people think. They don't care. They continue to censor or try to. They continue to, arrest people who have not done anything wrong. They continue to do that. I always have to remind myself in these cases where Trump is under indictment, he's not the only one. Most of these cases have many, many other defendants who, from my reading of the indictment, are equally as innocent. So they don't care about it. They're doing what they want to do. They're doing everything that they can to hang on to power. And if they lose power, they have every reason to expect that their fate will be awful. So when you hear people in the media, in the Democratic Party, saying that Donald Trump will not allow a peaceful transition of power in 2025, you need to hear a car screeching to a stop in your mind, because he's not in power. How can he block the peaceful transition of power? If Kamala Harris wins and becomes the next president, what, is Joe Biden not going to peacefully transition out and let her come in? Is that what they mean? Is that what they're talking about? I believe that if Kamala Harris wins, they will throw Donald Trump in prison. And that will be the end of it. So they have no reason to be concerned if they win. So Donald Trump does not have any power to transfer to anyone. So what they're saying is absolutely absurd. And it should worry you. But again, worry you just in terms of you needing to be aware of what's happening and to not allow them to have these conversations like January 6th is relevant. Donald Trump left. A lot of people didn't want him to leave. A lot of people wanted him to declare martial law. But he left. He left peacefully. People can look at Donald Trump and be like, well, he's doing things different than everybody else did them. He didn't concede the election. I'm so sick of the media always trying to get people to denounce things like words matter. They don't. Are you willing to condemn what they said about this? Are you willing to condemn what they said about that? If you want to, do it. If you don't want to, don't do it. I don't know what it doesn't make any sense to me, but they're constantly doing that. Are you willing to tell Donald Trump to stop saying this? Are you willing to tell him to stop saying that? Absolutely ridiculous. I think in the Democrat Party, they tell their people what to say and what not to say, or they try to, and maybe I don't know why they think that anyone, if Donald Trump is the cult leader that they say that he is, I don't think he is, but if he is, then what makes them think that anyone who is part of the MAGA movement is going to tell him to stop saying something and that's going to make any sense? So that means that their only purpose in doing that would be to try to divide and create division. And I don't see any evidence that that would work either. I think that Donald Trump will work with people that he disagrees with on the issues that they do align, as long as he feels like they are an honest person with integrity. And one of the ways that I will know if a person is honest and they have integrity is whether or not they can have a debate on the issues and be convinced to change their position with new information. That doesn't mean that you need to lie to them and manipulate them or to just bully them into saying, yeah, I agree with you. But you ought to be able to listen to, well, this is why I believe what I believe. Well, this is why I believe what I believe. Well, here's what I think are the long-term effects of doing this. Here's what I think are the long-term effects of doing that. I know you may want to help out with this type of program, but let me explain why I think that this might really hurt people more than it will help them. And you have these back and forths and you have these dialogues. And every time I'm talking to someone and maybe having a debate and maybe we're really passionate and they say, you know what, I can't talk about this anymore. I can't talk about this anymore. I'm like, if you're wrong, don't you want to know? If I'm wrong, I want to know. So pay attention to the projection about the peaceful transition of power, because this one's glaring. It makes no sense. Donald Trump does not have any power to transfer to anyone in January of 2025. So what are they talking about? What the hell are they talking about? Look forward to having a conversation with you in the comments. If you like this content, please subscribe to my channel, like this video, share this video, and I will see you in the next one.